There was a day at Kaizen where I realized I hadn't done a single piece of billable work in the last 3 weeks. And instead of panicking, well, I was relieved. That was the day that I started to realize that our agency had become a proper business. And not because I'd fully stepped back, because I hadn't, but because I'd finally built a layer between me and the work that could make decisions and actually complete projects without me having to be in the mix. So today I'm going to go through the entire process, exactly how to build that layer, even if you have a very small team. Hello, my name is Conor McCauley and I built and sold a creative agency called Kaizen in Belfast. Over 13 years I took it from 0 to 2.2 million in revenue, a team of over 40 designers, developers and creative team, and eventually I sold it for a multi-7-figure exit. For the last 5 or 6 years, I was the integration layer. Every decision, every client escalation, every hire, every pricing call went through me. And I thought that was good leadership, but it couldn't have been further from the truth. In fact, I was the bottleneck that was stifling our growth. I now coach agency owners through this exact same transition, and the pattern is always the same. They know they need a leadership team, they just don't know exactly what that means beyond you promote your best people and you hope. Right, let's start with what a leadership team is not. It's not your senior people. It's not the people who've been around the longest, and it's definitely not those people who are doing the best work. A leadership team is a decision-making machine. That's it. Can the business repeatedly answer these 4 questions without you? What are we doing this week? Who owns each outcome? What's blocked? And what decisions get made here versus escalated to you and I as the founder? If those 4 questions require you to be in the room, you don't have a leadership team, no matter what you decide to call it. And here's why this matters beyond just your sanity. A team with delegated roles and responsibilities can scale. They can build your business beyond just you, and ultimately a buyer is willing to pay more for this. They're underwriting 3 things: decision speed, performance consistency, and key person risk. If the founder is the integration layer, they see that as risk. The agency can't function without that one person. Many of you will be the oracle in your agency and you're asked all the questions because you know the right answer. That's not a business. Let's call it what it is, it's risk. I work with an agency owner doing between 80 and 90k a month. Good team, great clients, but every single decision over £500 goes through him. Every client escalation, every scope change, every HR conversation, that's all his. He was working 60-hour weeks every single week and couldn't take a holiday without his phone ringing daily. Does that sound familiar? The fix wasn't to get him to get better at delegating. It was building a system around 4 key functions. And here's the model that we implemented in his business. And I want to be clear, this works whether you've got 5 people in your team or 50. The functions stay exactly the same. In a smaller agency, one person might own 2 or 3 functions, and that's completely fine. But what matters is that every single function has a name next to it. And function number 1 is a commercial owner. This person owns the sales pipeline and its channels, its follow-ups, and the discipline that comes with it. That person knows the pricing integrity. They know how much qualified pipeline exists for the next 30 or 60 days, and they know which deals are struck and why. Ultimately, they can hold a price call without ringing you. At Kaizen, I held this function for far too long. I was the only person who could sell brands. New clients came from my network, my reputation, my LinkedIn, so when I was busy servicing my existing clients, the big accounts, the pipeline dried up. That's not a considered sales strategy, it's a fragile pipeline and it does not scale. Function number 2 is the delivery owner. That is output quality. Utilization and delivery margin. This person makes sure the work goes out on time, on brief and on budget. They own the definition of done. And I have a story about this one. Years ago, I gave a junior designer the training task of presenting a brand concept to myself and the creative director. She was genuinely really talented and brilliant at brand design. But the morning of her pitch to myself and the CD, she broke down crying in the studio, and I have to admit, that was my fault. I'd skipped some of the stages. She should have watched the creative director present first, then helped him present, then presented with him in the room for support. And ultimately, she should have then presented alone. And I threw her straight into stage number 4 because she was great at the production work. But presenting is a completely different skill. That story, well, it taught me something that I now tell every agency owner I work with. Delegation has 4 stages: watch, help, lead, and solo. If you skip any of the stages on high-stake deliverables, you're not empowering your team, you're setting them up to fail. And function number 3 is Client health owner. Who looks after renewals, the expansion pipeline, churn risk identified early in this process? In smaller agencies, this can be the same person as a delivery owner, but the function needs to be explicit and it needs to be robust. We had a general manager in Kaizen who was called Lindsay. Lindsay was brilliant at her job, and one of the best things I ever did was to redirect every operational question to her instead of answering it myself. Ask Lindsay, Lindsay will know Lindsay's decision. It must have come out of my mouth a dozen times every day, and that took discipline because my instinct was to just answer the question. I knew the answer, the person asking me the question knew that I knew the answer, and it would have been faster if I'd have just told them. But every time I answered directly, I was undermining her authority and reinforcing that I was the real decision maker. After about 3 months, it took that long, of consistent redirection, something changed in our business. People stopped coming to me, not because I was unavailable, not because I wasn't working, but because Lindsay had built the authority and the knowledge to handle it. She probably was still Skyping me in the background, but that was fine. That freed me up to focus on growth instead of operations. And function number 4 is the finance and operations owner. Weekly numbers, cash collected, forecasting accuracy. Someone needs to own the rhythm of reporting. Not just producing numbers, but making sure decisions happen off the back of them. If your numbers arrive late, if they arrive inconsistently, or that only the founder understands them, you do not have a reporting function. And that will eventually be the downfall of your agency. So if you want to see how key person risk and founder dependency affects the growth of, or what your agency could one day be worth, my free agency valuation assessment breaks it all down. It takes just 10 minutes, even less, and the link is in the description below. Install the Accountability OS. Okay, we've got 4 functions with 4 owners. Now we need the operating system to make that all come together. And this is the hardest part, so many of you have probably skipped it. You'll assign the roles and wonder why nothing changes. It doesn't change because you haven't installed the cadence. So step number 1 is to pick 6 to 10 numbers that run the business. Pipeline expectations for the next 30 to 60 days, proposals sent, win rate rolling to 30 to 90 days, team utilization, delivery margin, client health scored as a red, amber or green traffic light, cash collected versus invoiced. These are your scoreboard. Not a dashboard that you look at once a month, a scoreboard that you review with your management team every single week. Step number 2 is to assign 1 owner per number. Not the entire team, not a we, and name 1 person who is responsible and who takes full ownership for that number moving in the right direction. And step number 3 is putting it in the same meeting every week. Same day, same time, same format. Absolutely no exceptions. The meeting is, well, it's 40 minutes max. First 5 minutes is scoreboard review. Just the numbers, no stories, definitely no excuses. And if a number is off, we deal with it in the next section. The next 10 minutes, blocks and escalations. What needs a decision? What's stuck? And who needs help? The next 10 minutes, all about decisions. Write them down, who decided what, and what changes in our business as a result. And the last 10 minutes, incredibly important. Every commitment has an owner, a due date, and ultimately it has a definition of done. So here are the non-negotiables of this operating system. Discussions are optional, commitments are not. If your leadership meeting regularly runs over time and ends with, let's pick this up next week, you're not being effective with anybody in your team's time, and that has to stop right this second. And step number 4 is install the 1-3-1 rule. This one rule changed how my team operated. Before anyone escalated a problem, they have to bring the problem to me with 3 possible solutions and their recommendation, just 1 recommendation. No more, Connor, what should we do about X? Instead, here's the problem, here are my 3 options, and this is the one over here that I recommend and why. What do you think about it, Connor? That forced our team to have ownership. It trained them to think like operators, not employees, waiting for your instruction. And of course, you'll still get the final say, but I promise that more often than not, the leadership team already knew the answer and their answer is correct. Okay, so I'd like to tell you a personal story, the 50-pound rule that was in our business. And I can promise you this changed how we operated. I had a problem where my team would escalate absolutely everything to me. Should we use this stock image or that one? Should we buy this? Should we not buy it? Should we push the deadline back a day? Should we offer the client a small discount to close the deal faster? None of these decisions needed me. None of them needed my input. But because I'd always been the one making them, my team had been trained that the safest move was to ask me. They can't be wrong if I gave them the answer, and that was my mistake. So what I did early on in our business was introduce the £50 rule. If a decision will cost less than £50 to reverse, you don't ask me, you make the call yourself, and if it goes wrong, we'll fix it together. The cost of waiting for my approval was almost always higher than the cost of a wrong decision at any level. Now, the first week was painful. People still came to me out of habit. They'd say, is this a £50 decision? And then I'd answer, well, think about it. Yes was the answer. Well, then it's yours. Within a month, the volume of questions coming to me dropped by about 70%. Not because I was hiding, not because I was working any less, but because the team started owning the small decisions, which, well, it gave them the confidence to own the medium ones. That's what most agency owners get wrong about delegation. They try to delegate the very biggest tasks and the biggest stuff first. The strategic decisions, the client relationships, the pricing calls, and that's back to front. Start with the small decisions, let your team build their muscles around decision making and let them gradually raise the threshold. 50 becomes 500, 500 becomes 1,000 or 5,000, and one day you'll realize that you haven't made a day-to-day operational decision in weeks. And that's when you know the leadership layer is working. Here are 4 key signals that your leadership team is actually functioning the way it should. Number 1, fewer founder decisions per week. I want you to track it. If the number isn't dropping month on month, you're just adding payroll. Open up a Google Sheet and start recording everything. Number 2, fewer emergency escalations. If every problem is still urgent and needs you, the escalation thresholds are not well defined. And number 3, improved forecast accuracy. When the team owns the numbers and reviews them regularly and weekly, the forecasts should get better. And I don't think they'll ever be perfect, but better is always good enough. And number 4, fewer surprises in the delivery margin. If margin shocks are regular in your business, the delivery owner isn't owning the function, and there is work to be done there. And here's when to take action, okay? If these 4 signals aren't improving after 90 days, the problem isn't your team. The problem is probably that you haven't actually let go. You're still the shadow decision maker, and everybody in your team still knows it. Here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to write down the 4 functions in your business: commercial delivery, client health, finance, and operations. Put a name next to each one. If the same name, yours, appears more than 2 times, then that's your starting point. Then pick one function and hand that over properly. Not you're in charge, away you go, good luck. I want you to hand it over properly with clear metrics of success, a weekly review cadence, and an escalation threshold that defines when they should come to you and when they shouldn't. After that meeting, you will have handed over one function to one person with one proper handover. That's your first move. Now, if you want a complete picture of how founder dependency affects your agency's valuation, the free agency valuation assessment walks you through it, right? So that's over on my website, moveapace.com. The link is in the description below and it will take you less than 10 minutes. And if you want weekly frameworks on building an agency that runs without you, join the Move at Pace newsletter. Over 220 agency owners already are there. So again, we'll click the link below and you'll find it on my website. And if you've gotten any value from this video, please drop me a comment below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See you next week.